What if a billion-dollar Christian ministry's most revealing action was something it purposefully chose to keep quiet rather than something it shouted out loud? Because one of the biggest Christian broadcasting companies in the world does not now have a designated president. And the stillness gets louder the longer it lasts. In the US alone, the Daystar television network reaches over 64.7 million homes. For comparison, that figure surpasses TBN's coverage area of about 47.3 million houses in America. Daystar signal uses a combination of cable, satellite, and streaming technologies to reach over 2 billion households worldwide, spanning 6 continents. In Israel, it has a broadcast license. It is among the world's most important Christian media outlets by almost all quantifiable criteria. It also lacks a president as of May 2026. In any corporation this size and prominence, that fact alone would be noteworthy. However, the lack of a central identified leader is more than just an administrative matter in the unique world of Christian television, where viewers not only consume information but also emotionally invest in the personalities and families behind it. The statement is seismic. Many viewers and devoted Daystar fans are currently attempting to comprehend the precise meaning of the statement. You must first comprehend Daystar's foundation in order to comprehend the significance of the vacant presidential seat. A committee was not established by Marcus Lamb. His personality, vision, spiritual voice, and public authority were the focal points of his ministry. In 1981, he established the Word of God Fellowship in Mon, Georgia, and the following year, he wed Joni Trammell. Together, they established the Dallas-Fort Worth flagship, constructed a Christian television station in Montgomery, Alabama, and by 1997 had grown a local business into a nationwide network. Base was Marcus. Joni was standing next to him. Everything else revolved around them because they were the center of gravity. Joni naturally and publicly assumed that same pivotal role after Marcus passed away on November 30, 2021, due to COVID-19 issues. She continued to serve as president. She continued to be the ministry's obvious spiritual pillar. Because there was still just one distinct human being in charge of the organization, it managed to maintain its identity. At the age of 65, Joni Lamb passed away on May 7, 2026. According to Daystar's official statement, she had worked with the board before to her death to make sure an executive leadership team was in place so that, in the network's own words, the ministry would continue uninterrupted. That phrase is doing a lot of effort, so it should be read carefully and slowly. It informs viewers that the existing arrangement was deliberate. It wasn't bewilderment brought on by loss and grief. It was deliberate, according to the ministry's own public statement. Before she passed away, Joni Lamb reportedly selected 4 individuals to executive leadership roles at Daystar. She considered what lay ahead. She had prepared for it. However, the position of president is still noticeably unfilled in the public eye at the core of that envisioned future. The executive leadership structure at Daystar now consists of Arnold Torres as Chief Financial Officer, Rachel Lamb Brown in charge of communications, Joshua Brown in charge of business development, and Jonathan Weiss in charge of information technology, according to information made public after Joni passing. The governance structure of the board is also linked to Tom Calenderer, the network's legal counsel. None of these executives have the title that Marcus Lamb formerly held, but they are actual executives with real institutional duties. Unlike its founders, none of them openly leads the ministry. And in Christian media, that absence is currently the most talked about aspect. Naturally, audiences want to know if this is temporary. It may take some time for organizations dealing with the loss of a cherished founder to formally announce new leadership. That reasoning is entirely logical and comprehensible. There is grief. Transition is actually difficult, particularly for a ministry of size that is subject to international scrutiny. Daystar's supporters are earnest in their argument, and it merits a fair trial. However, the other viewpoint is just as plausible and is becoming more and more prevalent. The primary leadership title is usually not left unclear for long periods of time in organizations that consciously prepare their leadership transfer prior to the death of a founder. Nominating a president would have been the most logical and stabilizing step if Joni Lamb had collaborated with the board to guarantee continuous ministry operations. Viewers have started questioning whether the absence of this particular step is the solution in and of itself because it hasn't been made public. Daystar may be purposefully avoiding the public announcement of a president, according to some observers closely monitoring the situation, because doing so would force the current administrative structure to make a decision that it is currently unable to do without inciting more strife. Two names who have dominated the Daystar talk for over a year are directly responsible for the disagreement: Doug Weiss and Jonathan Lamb. Marcus and Joni Lamb have only one kid, Jonathan. For many years, he was Daystar's vice president. He might be seen in the air. He participated in decisions on leadership. Additionally, a succession plan purportedly penned by Marcus Lamb in August 2021, a few months prior to Marcus's passing, said that Jonathan was the person his father intended to eventually take over as network leader. That document has been widely shared in Christian media, discussed in public forums, and cited in investigative reporting. For many of Daystar's lifelong viewers, its existence has a great deal of emotional and moral weight, regardless of its exact legal enforceability within the Word of God Fellowship's governance system. However, Daystar's current leadership structure does not include Jonathan Lamb. In April 2024, he was demoted for refusing to sign a non-disclosure agreement. On November 16, 2024, he was fired. He and his spouse, Susie, are no longer affiliated with the organization. In July 2023, she was let go from her position as executive producer and co-host of Daystar's show, The Green Room. Jonathan talked of feeling truly free for the first time in years in interviews and public appearances after his dismissal, free from the institutional pressure and the culture of silence he felt had characterized his last tenure at the network. At the Restore 2025 conference, he and Susie discussed their experiences and identified as advocates for individuals who had dealt with abuse and institutional control. The response from the audience was astounding. It's easy to understand why the empty president discussion revolves around Jonathan's withdrawal from leadership. The question of who should lead Daystar has a recorded answer if Marcus Lamb's directive is acknowledged, even if it is done informally. The current leadership structure would need to make a statement regarding the events of the last few years in order to reinstate Jonathan, or at the very least publicly address what his father said. The private investigator was identified in September 2024, and the NDA requires the GPS tracking recorded in Daystar expense reports. The abuse claim involving Jonathan and Susie's daughter, as well as the board meeting tape in which Jimmy Evans told Jonathan that his mother was the voice of God. Susie publicly stated that the case may be reopened when her daughter was prepared to speak, but Cali police closed it in May 2025 due to a lack of evidence. There has been no public resolution to any of those incidents. They are all present in the background of any discussion regarding Daystar's potential as a leader. The other significant point of tension in this image is occupied by Doug Weiss. Following his marriage to Joni Lamb in June 2023, he became a prominent co-presence on Daystar's programming. Doug was regularly on broadcast, and viewers saw his status inside the network rise throughout 2024 and into 2025, despite Joni's public declaration in July 2023 that he had signed a prenuptial agreement and would not pursue leadership at Daystar. He was grooming himself for institutional authority, according to several of his detractors. Doug Weiss does not, however, publicly appear in Daystar's listed executive structure as of the time of this recording. Public property records showed that Joni had signed a rapid claim deed transferring a beachfront condominium in Miramar Beach, Florida, in March 2026, about 8 weeks prior to her passing. Bought for about $2. Doug's name was removed from the deed and $9 million was transferred into her own revocable trust in September 2023. The public is unaware of the transaction's internal purpose. The public is aware that it actually plays, that it was captured on camera, and that Joni Lamb was dealing with a severe health issue that ultimately claimed her life. The outcome of all these convergent realities is a leadership structure that, rather than being a picture of institutional clarity, many long-term viewers perceive as an image of an organization in internal conflict. This is what detractors are pointing out. In the absence of a designated president, the CFO now seems to be structurally closest to institutional authority. According to the ROI, Arnold Torres was Daystar's second highest paid employee in 2022, at over $300,000 a year. He attended the board meeting in April 2024 when Jonathan was demoted. In news reports after Joni passing, he is openly recognized as Daystar's spokesperson. He oversees the finances of a ministry that owns 7 properties spread across 4 states, totaling about $11.7 million. That is a huge position of institutional authority for someone who has not been officially identified as the spiritual or executive leader of the ministry, according to the same investigative investigation combined with a worldwide broadcasting operation. Daystar's supporters contend that this framing is unjust and unduly pessimistic. In any large business, having a CFO oversee operations throughout a transition is common procedure. A power grab is not demonstrated by financial prudence during a time of public dispute and unclear leadership. It is proof of professional accountability. That is a valid argument. However, many viewers point out that the issue is more than just structural.